Hi, and welcome to another installment of Boston Sci-Fi Presents. My name is Garen Daly. I'm your host. I'm joined by Erin Underwood and Nat Segaloff. Erin is a film reviewer. Nat is an old friend who is an author and film historian. And welcome, guys.
Good to be here.
Awesome to be here. Thanks a lot, Karen.
The way that I thought I'd start this off was is that we're talking about the polarizing lens. We're talking about films that may not be able to be made today because, well, they have Bud Light in it, or they say something bad. Um, and I think this is particularly sensitive to me, anyways, about this because there are two factors that I'm starting with, or two premises that I'm starting with. The first one is that independent film, by its very nature, needs to be provocative. And I've been reading reports about South by Southwest and some of the other film festivals where the independent films are getting really kind of soft and mushy in the middle because they're afraid of getting canceled out. And the other premise that I'm making is that science fiction or speculative fiction usually leads the way with some of the new ideas and thoughts that we're doing, and usually brings us along and guides us along. And if we are going to be so worried about that, are we going to end up losing something with that? That's really what sparked this conversation for me. Do you guys want to add anything to that, or my premise is worthy, or perhaps unworthy? Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'll start. Well, I kind of go with Stephen Fry's wisdom, which is he says, "I offended you. Well, so fucking what?" It's important to remember that we live in a world where there's a lot of bad stuff going on, and if you're going to give somebody else the power to offend you, then you're ceding your own power to this other person, and I don't go along with that. And remember, this is coming from the guy who wrote the biography of Harlan Ellison, who, believe me, knows about offending people, and I think he'd say the same thing. So fucking what?
Aaron, what do you think?
Well, I think a lot of this is actually driven by um, changes in society and how society needs to grow and change, and they use their art to experiment and grow and change over time. So I think that we're almost always perpetually in a moment of, wow, we could never do something like that ever again because this is how society's lens currently looks at things, and that just wouldn't be okay. 10 years from now, the stuff we're doing today will totally not be okay, but something else will, and it might even go backwards a little bit to find things that we realize, oh, some of these things were actually not as bad as we thought, and then they get brought back into the zeitgeist, into the normal way of thinking and doing things for the moment. So I think it's a constant churn, and I think as long as we understand that, I don't really get offended that easily anymore once I realize it's just a churn and it's a growing and a change.
I sometimes wonder whether or not there, and this is most probably a generational thing because I'm a septuagenarian at this point. But I got me too'd out of WGBH because I said that I wanted to fuck somebody once, and I don't normally say fuck in the podcast, but Net broke that one, so I figured. And even at the time, I kept thinking, well, and I thought the person was a friend, and we had talked about other things like that. But when the Weinstein thing happened, she ratted me out, and I got kicked off of WGBH for that and another reason. And I kept thinking to myself, why didn't you just challenge me? Why didn't you just say to me, I'm offended by that? And rather than waiting to backstab me, and I'm wondering whether that generational piece is also a part of it, where everyone gets an award, everyone gets coddled, and we're not
Yeah.
really like working with our manners. And to me, it's always a question of manners. If you do something wrong, you apologize. If you do something right, you praise somebody. So, is there an element of that within the zeitgeist when it comes to this kind of cancel culture that we're going through?
I don't. I
Yeah.
think, and I'm jumping in and ahead of you, Nat. Sorry about that.
Well,
No, that's
please,
fine.
please.
Um,
No, this is
so,
wonderful. I haven't seen you since the convention, so it's good.
So here's the thing about the Me Too movement, and I am a strong believer in the Me Too movement, but I also wrote a piece, for myself, that the Me Too movement was the worst thing that could ever happen for the Me Too movement, where I think that it was super important. People like me who were raped or abused or had really bad things happen or had people sexually harass us. We needed a moment in history where we could just speak out and say, no more. Like, I'm fucking done with that. Don't ever treat me like this again. And I need it to be okay for me just to scream it out loud at the top of my lungs. And I think there were a lot of people that ended up getting caught up in that moment and becoming part of the detritus of the leftovers of it. But I also think that there was a point where it started becoming hurtful as well, the Me Too movement, because we started going after anyone and everyone who ever did anything, like, and I don't think that's helpful either. And so it's, it's a pendulum, this social.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Pendulum. And so I'm so sorry, Garen. I know you and I understand you, and I get the sense of what you were talking about with your friend. And I wouldn't have said something, but in that moment, I think it swept up a lot of people, and it took us over. It took us over.
There are a couple of things. One is I harbor no ill towards anyone who said anything about me. Where I harbor ill will is with WGBH for not having the balls to actually talk to me about it and ask for my version of the story. They never did. They just got rid of me because I was a stringer, freelancer. And it was very convenient. It was at the height of the Weinstein period. Yeah. So, I mean, that's really, I just consider myself, collateral damage to a movement.
I want to speak to that too, because the danger is once a system is set up, it can be abused. And I don't know whether it's turning in somebody for a Me Too violation or, turning in your parents because they have communist or fascist literature.
Correct.
Where does the informing culture?
It's become an Arthur Miller moment.
Yeah, it is. I think it was Shaw who said a gentleman is someone who never insults anybody else unintentionally. And I think what we've got now is a system where a lot of people are trying to get even for absolute wrongs that were done to them, but they're firing off a cannon to kill a flea. And I think that social movements, it's my theory, are like humans. The first couple of years, they're childish. They move into adolescence, and then they develop some maturity. Look at any social movement, and that's what happens. And right now, we're at the very beginning of the Me Too movement, and I think it's going to mature into something that is actually very helpful for society.
I agree.
But right now, it isn't toilet trained.
Well, it is.
I think it's a little older than that. I think it's in adolescence.
It's gotten rid of Weinstein, and I can tell you, as somebody who's in the business with Weinstein, he was a despicable character.
He was.
And we're going to talk about despicable characters a little bit later. But I want to move us along back into our original topic, and I think it's appropriate. We want to do a thing with Barbarella, which is, is it empowering? Is it feminist? Is it sexploitive? Here's a clip from Barbarella.
Wait for me! What do you want of me? Oh.
Hello, pretty. Hello. Thank you very much. Do you want to come and play with me? For someone like you, I charge nothing. You're very pretty. My name isn't pretty, it's Barbarella.
Well, that was 1968, directed by Roger Vadim. And as I said in our pre-production, I just really love those large size Amazon packaging things that they used as set decorations. So Nat, what do you think? I mean, I think you've got a pretty good idea about what Barbarella was and is today.
To show you how old I am, I saw it when it was a sneak preview before they released it. It was always a satire. It didn't always work, but it was always supposed to be a satire. But I've also had the privilege of working with Jane many times over the years. And I can tell you that not only is she a survivor and incredibly smart and a real compassionate person, she also has had various phases of her political awareness. And I believe that she actually believed that what she was doing was satire, no matter how offensive some people find it today. But she didn't really develop her political consciousness until she got together with Tom Hayden. And then there was no stopping her. And I have such admiration. She helped radicalize me. So I think that Barbarella is very much a relic of its time, but it was meant to be funny even then. I don't think it necessarily was, but it was meant to be a satire at the time.
Erin, could Barbarella be made today as it is seen on the screen?
I actually think it could be, but it would have to be changed significantly, or at least to some degree. I think it could be done as a satire, but I don't know that it would be as powerful, because, I mean, Barbarella came out, at the height of the sexual revolution, where women were just like realizing their own power. They were breaking out of the kitchen and the domestic duties and where they'd been kind of kept and contained for so long. And suddenly, I mean, it was okay to be sexy and beautiful, and it was okay to be wanted, and it was okay to want yourself, and it was okay to want another woman, and you're seeing all of this play out on the screen. And I think that when it comes to Barbarella, you're getting so many different things. It's a radical film in its own way. And so while it is satire, there are some truly interesting moments there. Like we just saw in the 60s, a woman who was totally coming on to another woman. And you rarely saw that kind of stuff back then. And they were both like super sexy women where there was some kind of chemistry and energy. It started out with two men about to rape a woman, or, with certain ideas in their head. And then it ended up with another woman saying, hey, maybe we could have some fun. And,
So I think we can say that Barbarella could be made, and that it would not necessarily be lost in our cancel culture or the cultural wars that are going on.
I think so. I think it would just take a little bit of sculpting and a bit of refinement, but I think that it could actually be made.
The other thing to remember is that it wouldn't have been made at all if Jane Fonda wasn't a big enough star and didn't put her clout behind it. So really, she's the one who empowered it.
Yeah. And Roger Vadim was just a French director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine it if Lady Gaga was in the starring role. I mean, it would be a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But our next piece, I don't think we can say that. And our next speech is all about cultural appropriation. And our director, Mark Sherwood, put together this little clip of Fisher Stevens from Short Circuit.
I am seeing him. He is busy vomiting. Well, the cat is dragged in a sight for 4 eyes, that is for sure. You look dreadful. Oh, Sherwood, this is a barrel of monkeys. Oh, let us go scrape up some female chicks. An opportunity to spread your legs. Good to smell the breezes, Girlie, come quick, girlie, danger. Come on, you. Oh, my God.
What planet is this guy from?
Oh, you are a girl, right?
Yes, as far as I know.
I am standing here beside myself. Oh, I am sick of wearing the dress in his family.
Where are you from, anyway?
Bakersfield, originally.
No, I mean your ancestors.
Oh, damn. Pittsburgh.
And I hope you noticed that when he was pulling out that computer, it was an old Mac SE, which really shows the dating of that movie.
Yeah.
We chose this film for a variety of reasons, because obviously it is really inappropriate for someone to almost do a brown face on an Indian accent. Or am I wrong with that? What do you think there, Erin?
Yeah, I think it's pretty problematic, and I actually give kudos to Fisher Stevens, or yeah, Fisher Stevens. He actually came to his own awareness of that, and I think it was in an interview he had a few years ago where he just really realized how bad it was, and said, you know what, I would never do that again. And if it were a different time, and if I had been more socially aware, I would never even have considered it. Um, yeah, I there's nothing wrong with the film, but I think that character just needed a big rewrite and a recasting.
You know, I'm reminded of Peter Sellers as Hurdy V. Bakshi in Blake Edwards' The Party, where he also played an Indian role with the accent, and it was funny, and I don't think it was inappropriate because it was a caricature. And I think the thing to look at with Fisher Stevens' portrayal, or with the film itself, is could that character exist if it wasn't an Indian speaking with the Southern Asian accent? Could it be a Swede? Could it be anybody else saying the same things? And if the character can exist with the same funny lines separate from the characterization as a South Asian, then yeah, it probably should have been more generic. If the Indian is only there to be made fun of, then it's entirely inappropriate. But I want to put this little zets in there. I think Fisher Stevens was quoted in an interview years later saying he was the first person ever to get away with saying the F word in a Disney movie. So maybe there's some compensation there.
You know, one of the pieces that I liked about using this as a springboard is there's a lot of talk out there that only a certain person can play, like say a disabled person. Only a certain person can play a woman, or I mean, I'm thinking of, or a trans person. I'm thinking of Eddie Redmayne in that, I think it was the Dutch Girl, or whatever. I can't even remember the name of the movie, but he played a trans person, and where is the boundary of what an actor can do and what an actor can't do? I think it was the guy that played Memento recently got into a kerfuffle online because he said, we're actors. This is what we do. And there was a lot of blowback on it. Where is the boundary for anyone who is an actor to be able to expand what they can do in their profession without crossing that line?
Well, the cue I take is from Vito Russo, who wrote The Celluloid Closet and was a member of ACT UP, and of course was a historian about not only films but gay films. And he says the problem isn't that gays were villains in films, because that was the case for so long. It was that there are no positive images to compensate for those. And so if you're talking about one actor playing someone of a different gender, choice, race, or whatever, it's that if the star gets the film made and a person of the appropriate cast can't get it made, do you make the film or don't you make the film? And I think this business about casting being appropriate is a crock of it. Either the film's going to get made or it won't get made. You should have the best possible actor, actress, or plural for it. But then we get into considerations that have nothing at all to do with society. It all has to do with the Hollywood pay scales.
And whether or not the film will make money. I mean,
yeah, I'm not concerned about somebody playing somebody who's different than they are. That's what actors do.
Yeah, I mean, I think just let me just interject here. I think you're right, because when I'm looking at the grosses for Flash, which just came out as we're taping this, Ezra Miller has gotten such a bad rap that I think that it's turned people away and it's hurt its grosses. Now that's just a personal opinion.
No, I agree with you. I actually think Ezra Miller, not that we meant to be talking about The Flash, but I actually quite enjoyed that film. And I thought Ezra Miller did a great job. And I know there are some people that are kind of weirded out by him. Maybe he looks he's not the handsome Barry Allen that maybe a lot of people were hoping for, the handsome, quirky, cute Barry Allen. He's a little bit different and totally fine with that. And I think that's part of what some people don't like. When it comes to casting the right person for the right role, I do think there's something to be said for if you're a trans actor and you are trying out for a role of a trans person in whatever film or play or whatever it might be, I think there is something special you can bring to that role, a deeper understanding, and that another actor may or may not be able to tap. And the fact is, a lot of these actors who, aren't straight, white, whatever, male or female, often get overlooked. And I think that's the thing that we have to stop, is the overlooking of very talented, very qualified people. If you look at a series like Sense8, there was a trans actor in that series who did a magnificent job, and you wouldn't even know. It's not like it's not like that's why the person got cast. The person got cast because they were the best choice and brought a wonderful sensibility to the characters. And I think for so long, people who were outside of that traditional norm just simply got overlooked. And I'm glad that they're no longer being overlooked. They deserve to be seen and they deserve to be considered. And, I also think that when you're looking at like Brendan Fraser in his role in The Whale, he played a character who was massively overweight and what that was like. And he did gain some weight for the role, and maybe there were other overweight actors who could have played that role as well. But I do think that that's one example of a character or an actor who really got into the character and understood the character and became the character. And it is what actors do, is they become other people and they change so much about themselves to come out on screen that way. So I don't know. I think that there are some right answers and some wrong answers, and we're in that part of, I don't know, the field where we're just figuring these.
Well, I think one of the words that kept coming to me when you were talking was the actor needs to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I think if the authenticity comes from their own personal experiences, then it carries a little bit more weight.
Let me add something to that.
Sure.
Must a film about a trans person be written by a trans person? A film about women being written by a woman? Must we go that far back? Must it be directed by a trans person or produced by? Because if you're going to bring real authenticity, you should have at every level people who can relate to the story and the main characters. How realistic is it to get a film made to educate the public? Because if you can't get a film made, the public doesn't learn bupkis from it.
So, but again, the problem always is that if the film is really proselytizing and is really, is in its own world, then it's not going to be able to break out and cross throughout all of the different demographics. It's going to be tough to make money, especially when you're looking at the grosses right now and how the streamers are getting more and more dicey about picking up, challenging product.
I know. That's the template we're stuck in now.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to break.
I don't think you have to have someone at every level who is in that niche group, but I do think you need to have some people who understand. Like if you had a bunch of white people writing a film about the African experience, and then you had a bunch of white people playing Africans, and you had a bunch of white people filming in Africa, and a bunch of white people on the production team and the post-production team and then the marketing team, and no black people, that would be horrendous on every level. And that's how it was for a really long time. Yeah. And we're getting away from that. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
No, I think
I'll tell you something. Let me try to wrap that up. Martin Ritt was a friend of mine, the director, and he made Conrack, Sounder, all number of progressive films. And he used to get grief every now and then from people in the African-American community about his making these movies. And he said, don't tell me what films I can make. If you can make a film like that, make it. but don't stop me from making my films. So I think there's a large continuum that we have to consider when it comes down to who can make what films.
Speaking of that, so because I need to segue into the next segment, is people who I consider to be artists who are really despicable and detestable human beings. And at what point do we look at their art versus their personalities and what they're being accused of? And the perfect example is Woody Allen. And here is a clip from Sleeper.
Could I have a hit off of that or Milo?
So obviously Woody Allen from Sleeper with the ball of dope is what I used to call that. I did a quick study on, how many artists out there are considered to be pretty reprehensible. Picasso, Dali, Degas, Raoul Dahl, Gauguin, Caravaggio, Bob Kane. I mean, these are all people that have some really serious issues with their morality and with how they treat other people, but still they're considered great artists. Where is the line between artistry and or ostracism? Or should there be one? Is it like what we were just talking about?
I'm thinking of Orson Scott Card too, in our community.
Yes.
It depends on the work. I really think so. Now I can afford to be forgiving because I'm a white man, but Mike Nichols said the secret to success in this business is don't work with assholes. And I think that applies on different levels, but Woody's innocent. There's nothing that convicts him except being a Pharaoh's opinion and the brainwashing of her children.
Yeah, but his career has been damaged.
Oh, sure. And he has no recourse either. His new film is now being released only in Europe. He can't find an American distributor at this point. Is it his fault that he had marital problems?
Well, okay, so I go back. Where do we kind of draw the line? Because again, I start thinking about the Hollywood 10, where they are, they're accused of being communist because communism was a bad word. Now the Republicans are, adopting communism as patriotism. But
they didn't do anything wrong either. But don't forget, that was all to get attention for a congressional committee and to get rid of as many Jews as they could in Hollywood. It had nothing to do with who was right or wrong. Communism was legal.
But all right, so is that the case with some of these other people? Is that whoever's writing the history are the people that are making the rules? I mean,
the work will stand. The work will stand long after the person is dead. Look at Wagner. Or listen to Wagner, the same,
Okay, so
I don't know. So when it comes to Woody Allen, I think it also has to do with maybe the generation in which you were born. Like my mom loved Woody Allen. Like she loved his films. I don't like. I see why some people he's very clever and there are some smart things that he does, but I just never enjoyed his films. And this is far before I even knew there were problems and accusations. I just never enjoyed his work. It just wasn't for me. So when accusations came out about what he may have done or what he did do, what people thought he did, what people thought he didn't do, that was all just like more noise in the Woody Allen field. I was like, really? Like, well, now I'm really like, I didn't care about him before, and now I care about him even less. Like, so that's, I don't know. I think it's also a time and a place, and he lost his time and place. Like the generations of today just don't find what he does that clever and funny any longer, and they're not willing to overlook what he might have done because they don't care enough about his work.
Interesting.
I think
That sounds like the quality of the work is what enables us to forgive or not forgive somebody. I mean, I can't stand a single frame of film that Wes Anderson has ever shot, but that doesn't mean that I don't hope that he lives a good, free life. I don't,
Yeah. No, and I get that. I think when you think of his name just went straight out of my head. Okay, all my friends are gonna be like, Erin, I can't believe you can't remember his name, but who wrote Call of Cthulhu?
Call of what?
Of Cthulhu? The horror?
Oh, I don't know.
I see it. I see the book cover, but I can't think.
Don't worry about it. Just go around.
Okay. Anyways, so I have this problem. I forget people's names all the time. I'm so sorry.
Welcome to my world. Go ahead.
But here we have a massively racist person who is Lovecraft. Yes, Lovecraft, a massively racist person who wrote some incredible horror that has so many levels in it that each time you strip something away, you find something new that is incredibly intelligent and well done and just horrific in its own right for all kinds of reasons. And so a lot of people forgive him or overlook that because of the work, and a lot of people can't, and they discount it, and then they toss it out. I don't know what the right answer is. I think
that the art is what, and I think you said this earlier, Nat, the art is what's going to survive. And the other stuff is kind of like, it may not necessarily be noise, but something in their artistry might come from the madness or the weirdness that exists inside of them.
Yeah. You like to think that somebody who is as sensitive as need be to create such art should be sensitive to other people and aware of the rights of people.
But that's not the case.
No.
Our next film is, and this one is a little more problematic for me, is from Paul Verhoeven, and it is, Starship Troopers. And here's a clip from that.
Young people from all over the globe are joining up to fight for the future.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
They're doing their part. Are you? Join the mobile infantry and save the world. Service guarantees citizenship.
Like I said, that's from Paul Verhoeven, based on the Heinlein novel. It's very, the novel is much more fascistic than the book is. And Nat, you had some thoughts about that when we talked earlier. Did you want to expand on them?
Well, it's supposed to be satire, but I don't think Verhoeven has a strong enough grasp. I mean, Showgirls is supposed to be satire too. Maybe it's the fact that the Dutch sensibility is different. I preferred his work back in Holland. I really haven't caught, except with RoboCop.
Soldier of Orange is very good.
Yeah. Oh my God. And Spetters and all of his earlier stuff. I just really don't much care for the sweep of what he became in America. But more power to him. He's a heck of a good filmmaker. But I didn't think the Starship Troopers really did anything special for me. I thought it was a bore from beginning to end. And I didn't think that the redeeming value of satire, A, was novel, or B, was consistent.
What do you think, Erin?
Yeah, I actually really liked the film. I understand it's satire, and it didn't go as far into that spectrum as maybe it could have or should have gone. But there were parts of it when I watched that film. At that point in time, I'd never read a Heinlein novel. And so it was an absolutely new experience for me. And as a brand new experience, it did some things for me intellectually that I appreciated. It opened my eyes to that militarism in that you see there, the use of drugs and psychology, like in a way drug warfare, or in, creating a psychological warfare, pitting people against people without them realizing it. I mean, there's a lot of groupthink happening there. It did a lot of things intellectually that I really appreciated. But again, at that time, I'd never read the novel, so I didn't know if it went far enough or not. But I got the parts out of it that I needed to appreciate the film. But it did take me a little while to figure out, like, what the hell am I watching?
Yeah, it's hard to satirize fascism because
Yeah,
it's so obvious. I mean, once you've seen the producers, how do you satirize fascism? It's already its own satire, if you're not caught in the fascist web, of course.
right.
He had a sense of I think Gore Vidal used this expression on something else. He stumbles on the obvious with a case of discovery.
Yeah.
Well, our next one is I kind of want to go after the director, because one of our next clip is from Weird Science, and yes, it's sexist and all that, but it's John Hughes, and John Hughes. There's a certain segment of film goers and film lovers that hold John Hughes up to a really high level, and in a way make him a great independent filmmaker. But in reality, there's some very disturbing things about him. Here's a clip from Weird Science.
She's alive! Alive!
So, what would you little maniacs like to do first?
So the premise is obviously objectification of women and very puerile, young male hormones out of whack and stuff like that. But that's not the first time that John Hughes has done something that was dubious. I mean, if you go back to 16 Candles, there is a consent issue. There is passing off of almost a rape. And he gets away with it because it's wrapped in comedy and it has these allusions to some other films, like with that one, an allusion to Frankenstein. Am I just being hard on John Hughes because I find his films uneven?
Puerile, perhaps. Look at the audience. He's making something to please the audience. Frankly, the most offensive thing I find in there is somebody colorized Frankenstein. But
I don't know. You have to also think about the time in which the film was made. Like, I don't think it's aged well, frankly.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'll also tell you, at the time that it came out, I was a young girl and I loved that movie. Like, I thought that, I can't remember her name, the character's name that they created.
Kelly LeBrock.
Say again?
Kelly LeBrock.
Kelly LeBrock. Right. So she was beautiful. Like, and here, I don't know, maybe I'm revealing way too much on this show, Garen, because we're all friends here. But when I was little, I felt like I was an ugly, dorky, unwanted, unpopular girl, and bad things happened to me. And I remember seeing this film and thinking, she's so beautiful and she can have whatever she wants and she can do whatever she wants. And that's a power I can never have. And in that moment, I'm dreaming about it a little bit. And I remember that little girl in me watching that film when you played that clip. And for good or bad, that film did some stuff for the children of the time. I don't think it was really made for anyone else. It objectified women terribly. I would never be okay with that film now as a grown woman who's realized my own power and my own worth. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I think about that film, but I do remember loving it when I was a kid.
That's a brilliant comment, Erin, because what I think you've said, and I hate to mansplain, but
Okay.
I've actually written about this. The importance of the John Hughes movies and also Beverly Hills 90210, I'm thinking about, is kids were never given much attention or credibility in most television or movie dramas. Even Rebel Without a Cause, they were almost in the background. And they were 40 years old. But with the John Hughes canon especially, and for the audience that is invited to see them, they're taking the very real problems of kids and treating them seriously. They're treating the kids as if their problems really do mean something, even if the parental figures or the teachers don't say that. And I think the films were very supportive, even if they were a little bit bizarre now and then. Because when you're a kid, teenage years are hell. High school is horrible. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a documentary as far as I'm concerned. Nobody was taking kids seriously except John Hughes. And I think that's very important to a whole generation who grew up watching his movies.
Yeah, I think then that really was the first generation where teenagers got our own set of films that were designed for us. You brought up 16 Candles, and that, and The Breakfast Club. I mean, those films were like instrumental to my figuring out what the hell I was doing, and the idea that a girl could get pregnant and then go have that taken care of, and nobody would talk about it, but yet things were happening and things were changing. And I mean, there was just so much we learned about ourselves in those films, as problematic as they were. And that makes me wonder, are we creating those kinds of films for today's teenagers where they're learning about themselves and
That's
crazy?
a perfect segue to my last thought that I wanted to talk to you guys about. And that is, when I started this, I talked about what the premises of I was going forward with. And I consider John Hughes basically an independent film director. I think he came out of nowhere, and I think he went to the studio system, but he was an independent guy. And what I'm reading now and what I hear from other film festival directors is that the quality of the films coming into film festivals don't have that kind of provocative, earth-shattering viewpoints that perhaps John Hughes did for you, or another director did for other people. But they're also concerned about being cancel cultured or being the Bud Light of the moment, that they are really scaling back and not reaching forward with their best artistic foot. And I wonder if we are at a point where those kinds of films need to find a new place other than film festivals to be made and screened.
Yeah, you're right. We almost need a curated system, an independent system, streaming or whatever. If there's ever any money in it, which there isn't for anybody, kind of a private label kind of thing.
Yeah, I kind of think that, I mean, you look at a film like Don't Look Up or Asteroid City, some of these new films that do question the zeitgeist of the moment, or do question some kind of political topic happening, or that explore groupthink in a new and interesting way. But the thing those films have in common is they all have A-list actors who are able to get in there and pull it off. And I do have this thought that perhaps A-list actors are so tired of these films that are so generic in structure and quality that when they get these crazy, quirky, wacky films, they go after them whole hog because they want to do something desperately.
And many times at a reduced cost.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Passion projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then where does that leave the young no-name
Well,
directors?
I started this out, but as a festival director and as someone who programs and who has and literally sees probably 300 to 400 shorts from a bunch of new film directors coming out there, I think one of the things I love about sci-fi is that's still very much alive. We still get experimental films. We still get some things that are very much being challenged, and we're starting to see that right now. A lot of the shorts we're getting right now are tackling AI. Because that is a real big issue for everybody. And we see that every season where there is a new theme that people are concerned with. And with shorts, the gestation period is much shorter than a feature film. So you're catching it a little bit ahead of schedule. So I do believe that it's true with science fiction. I'm not sure about other film festivals.
So we do think shorts do something for film that short science fiction does for like novel length science fiction. It's a playpen. It's a sandbox.
It's a calling card.
Mm-hmm. Where we try out new ideas and see what works and what doesn't. And I do think there's a lot more AI out there in the shorts. And I just want to give a quick, I just want to say, if you guys haven't seen the film Critters, my friend Chad Nelson created it using AI and generative AI and Dolly. And I know there are a lot of people who are very down on AI in film and art, but I think that it's a tool. And
it's a tool, it's a toy, but a lot of people are going to be looking at it like Oppenheimer, that they're creating a tool that until someone builds something that's bigger and better, or it's going to be the Colossus for the Forbin project.
So far, the Copyright Office has declared that AI material cannot be copyrighted. Work has to be created by a human in order to be copyrighted under the Constitution. I'm sure some Republican has changed that. Yeah, but
anyways, guys, we have to wrap up. We've been talking for a long time, longer than I anticipated, but the conversation has been really, really good. So, quick sum up. Are there are films that can't be made today, but a lot of the films can be made today. Is that what we're ending up with?
Yeah, it's all how you do it. Some things have gone passé. Other things are in vogue, and just don't treat anybody badly. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. And what was it about? Don't work with assholes.
Yeah, don't work with assholes, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, it's all in the art of the adaptation. I mean, anything can be remade and be remade better and smarter and more on point for this point in time. But hey, 10 years from now, it may not be on point any longer. It might be passé. But it's all about how you choose to adapt the thing. But I do think a lot of stuff could be remade with an intelligent.
All right, so before we go, Nat, I'm sure you have something that you would love to plug, and what would that be?
By coincidence, I have a new book coming out. It's called...
I'm shocked to hear that.
The Exorcist Legacy, 50 Years of Fear. It's coming out from Citadel Press. It's been several years in the making. Thank you, Mr. COVID. And it's got everything from the first Exorcist movie, all the stuff you ever wanted to know about it, to all of the sequels and all of the prequels and the upcoming threequel that's coming out in the TV series. In other words, it's a deep dive into all that is Exorcist. And it was a lot of fun to put together. And since my experience with The Exorcist goes back 50 years, it's nice that I can finally share some of that secret with everybody else.
When the book comes out, is there a place where people can buy it or advance buy it?
It's available all over on everything and everybody, but you can get it from Amazon at any time you want.
Okay, cool. Erin, I know you've got some new projects you're working on.
I do, but first off, I want to say I'm going to steal the term threequel from Nat. Yeah, I've actually been doing reviews for quite a long time, but I've just started up a new YouTube channel for movie reviews. So if you want to check that out, come on over to YouTube at Erin Underwood and check out my reviews. And definitely subscribe to my channel because I'm trying to get 1,000 and I'm like at 904 right now.
Well, very good for you.
Great, good work.
96 more people.
Well, we will shamelessly pimp you because that's what we do and we like to do it and we like to help our people. So, Anyways, that's it for this installment. I want to thank Irene and Mark, our producer and director, respectively, for putting this all together and getting those clips together. And I want to make sure people know that we are Boston Sci-Fi. We're back in February with a in-person and at-home version. The in-person is the 14th through the 19th of February, and the at-home is the 20th through the 29th, virtually on Filmocracy. And we'll be having podcasts, and we have a couple other things going. So please follow us at www.bostonscifi.com. And we're going to close out with a teaser for our next podcast, which is all about sea monsters that I love. Thank you very much. My name is Garen Daly. Thank you, Nat. Thank you, Erin.